Hey guys, Sneaky Snake here, Brothers in Arms, World of Warships, and today's video we're going to take a look at the Tier 9 Japanese heavy cruiser, the Ibuki. Just in the most recent patch, this ship finally received some long-awaited love, and it is now not necessarily a bad cruiser, or at least that is the perception that a lot of the community gives this ship, and to be fair, it was once pretty mediocre. However, with the slew of changes, this ship now is able to stack up to its competition much better than ever before. And of course, in this review and commentary, we're going to look at the stats, the equipment and consumables, and the captain skills that I run and use before we get into some A+ gameplay. So without further ado, let's take a look at the statistics. The survivability of the Ibuki is a flat 39,000. It's actually a 100 hit point reduction from the Mogami at Tier 8, and the ship has up to 140 millimeters of belt armor. However, as we're going to take a look here in the armor model, when we take away the plating, it's 100 millimeters as a matter of fact along the center line. That 140 only extends basically where the ABC and XY turrets are at. However, only 25 millimeters of aft and bow plating, which is very bad. Even 15-inch battleship guns can overmatch that. However, you do have 32 millimeters of deck armor. Overall, this ship is not one that's going to be tanking a lot of shells. Taking a look at the main battery, this is the biggest change. Its base reload was buffed from 15 to 13.7 seconds, and with main battery modification 3, you now have a reload of 12.1 seconds, which is not bad whatsoever. You also get the great Japanese HE shell performance of 3,300 points of damage and a 21% fire chance if you do have Demo Expert, and also a pretty decent firing range of 16.5 kilometers. So it continues to build upon what you've learned from the Furutaka through the Mogami, and this is a great intermediate to long-range HE spammer with the capacity to use the AP shells at 10 kilometers and under to pretty good effect. But overall, this is now a much better gun platform on the Ibuki, and you can afford to run main battery mod 3 as long as you take the spotting aircraft. The torpedoes remain the same. You get 4 launchers of 4 torpedoes each, so a nice broadside of 8 torps, and these are some of the best performing cruiser torpedoes in the game. 20,000 damage with a max hit, 10 kilometers of range, and a decent speed of 67 knots makes, when the Ibuki turns away from you as an enemy ship, pretty dangerous, because these things hit very hard and they have excellent range. So even at 12 or 13 kilometers, as long as the enemy ship is coming towards you, you can afford to drop them. The AA on the Ibuki is a pretty decent upgrade from the Mogami, but it is still nowhere near levels such as German or American anti-aircraft performance. Fully speccing an Ibuki for AA will get you a pretty decent bit of AA support. However, with the carrier changes upcoming, I haven't touched the AA just yet. The maneuverability, 36.8 knots with the speed flag, makes this one of the fastest cruisers in its matchmaking bracket, a decent turning circle of 770, and a rudder shift time of 7.3 seconds, and that is without the rudder shift module. However, taking a look at the ship, its width, it is very, very skinny. So this thing, when it is turning full over, as you're going to see compared to this Buffalo, you can see how much wider and how much fatter that ship is. No American pun intended there. But the Ibuki is very sleek, and it is hard to hit when you're maneuvering at range pretty extensively. The concealment, 9.7 kilometers, is very good for a cruiser. You can technically stealth torp with this ship, which is a nice little bonus, but 9.7 kilometers is going to allow you to control most ranges of engagement. The only ships off the top of my head that are better would be things like the Minotaur and the Edinburgh. There are probably a couple others, but overall, it's great concealment. Now, when you look at the upgrades, you're going to go with main armaments modification 1. You want to keep those turrets in play, of course, with the 10 guns. I prefer to go with steering gears because going up through the Japanese cruisers, they do have a preponderancy to take hits to the rudder and get it knocked out for good, so you want to do that. Aiming systems modification 1. The other big thing about this ship now is that all of the Japanese cruisers from tier 5 through 9 have upgraded accuracy that's almost on par with the Zhao. I prefer to go with propulsion modification 2, so you can obviously speed up 50% quicker. Concealment to get down to that 9.7 kilometer of concealment, which is great. And then lastly, like I mentioned, main battery modification 3. Now you can go with the gunfire control system if you still want to be able to extend the range. It will get you out from 16.5 to 19.2 kilometers, but of course you'll lose that reload. And with the spot plane, even though I don't know why anybody would want to do that, you will be able to reach out past 22 kilometers if you have the range mod equipped. Now, since this is a Tier 9 cruiser, you do have access to the repair party, so that's one thing I highly recommend to get premium of. I go with the spotting aircraft so you can extend your range damage out to about 20 kilometers if you have main battery modification 3 equipped, which I of course do. And then, since this thing doesn't have the best AA, it's generally advisable to run with defensive AA modification so that you're able to at least somewhat protect yourself and your allies if you are close enough to them. Now, looking at the upgrades, you are going to want to go for the gunfire control system first, because if you don't have it, your range is about 15.3 kilometers, and then you want to be able to get that B hull finally with the upgraded torpedoes, those Type 93. Now, looking at the captain, obviously priority target is one of the most important cruiser captain skills to have, to know how many people are aiming at you. The second one, I go with adrenaline rush because it doesn't have the best DPM, so when you do take damage, of course, you will be able to get a faster reload. Superintendent for the extra heal, and spot plane, which is very important. You could go with the demolition expert for your third one if you so desire, and then of course concealment expert to round off your 10-point captain. Other skills that go well on the ship, of course, once I get enough points, Demolition Expert is going to be one that you get your fire chance buffed as well. Basics of survivability is not bad at all, especially when you get lit on fire or maybe you take the flood. It's obviously going to last for a lot less amount of time. Expert Marksman, even though the ship does have a good turret traverse, is nice. And then, of course, Expert Loader, so it'll only take you, at least with main battery mod 3, about 6.2 seconds to switch once you have the guns fully loaded. So that's the Ibuki statistically and the build that I have on it. And now we're going to get into some great gameplay in Tier 9 matchmaking. So let's go take a look. Alrighty guys, getting here to the gameplay on Estuary. We're doing some domination, and I'm playing with my buddy from TWA, Pro Ace, and from Tango, Ready Set. They're playing in the Musashi and Fletcher respectively, the Tier 9 Premium Japanese BB and American Destroyer. So this spot that I'm going to go to here on Estuary is a spot that I do frequent quite a lot in my cruisers. However, I mentioned it in my Miyoko commentary a couple days ago. This ship, much like American heavy cruisers, is able to go play the island game with its guns, and because it doesn't have rail guns that you'd find on Soviet cruisers or a couple of the German cruisers, this ship is actually able to sit behind islands and comfortably shoot while undetected. Now, there are going to be a few occasions here where I do get spotted briefly, but for the most part, I'm going to set up shop right here and deal quite a bit of damage from the safety of the cover and concealment that these islands are providing me. My first shot does go downrange at the Miyoko, and because I do get spotted, that means that there is something directly due south of Ready Set at the moment, as he is going onto the A-cap. And what do you know, there we go, the Mahan does get detected. However, you saw that first salvo right there, almost 7,000 points of damage. And as you can see on the next salvo on the Mahan, another big meaty hit for over 4,000. And if you guys have noticed on those first two salvos just how tight the dispersion is when these shells come out of the barrel. Now, it's not the exact same dispersion and accuracy as the Zhao, but it's pretty darn close. It's 129 meters of dispersion if you run Aiming Systems Modification 1 on this ship. So whenever ships get within, say, 12 kilometers and under, you're going to be landing consistently, and I'm not BSing here, 6, 7, 8, even 9 and 10 shells on target at one time. So it makes this thing very dangerous, albeit with the low DPM, to face off against at those medium ranges, because you can be sure that you're going to be able to hit a lot of shells on target. Now you can see that our team has deployed quite heavily to the eastern side of the map. There is a Jervis that is inexplicably rushing through the middle to the west now, and a lot of our battleships are over there on the eastern side. So it's really only us four here, my division, and then a friendly Edinburgh. So we're going to have to hold down this flank right now. You can see 4,400 and a fire set on the Belfast. Obviously, it's one of the most dangerous Tier 7 ships in the game, but it does not have the heal. So every big meaty HE salvo that goes down range is going to chunk that guy down. And right there, another hit for 4,400 damage with 6 penetrating hits. And then as he turns away, we are once again going to get another HE salvo off, and another 6 to 7 shells are going to impact the target and set yet another fire for about 4,400 damage again. Now, one of the best ships to be able to shoot at with Japanese heavy cruisers in general, are the Nelson and all of the British battleships, as well as the French too, because they have 32 millimeters of armor all over the place, which means that they do not have enough to be able to shatter your high explosive shells. So you're going to see just how much damage I'm able to farm off of this Nelson in particular. The damage result at the end of the game is of course going to be pretty nice, but off of this Nelson it's going to be pretty crazy. Now you can see there I do get detected briefly. Not exactly sure what did it. However, as you can see, I get back into a position after I moved a little bit forward, and I'm once again shooting from stealth here. And because the Ibuki doesn't have the best armor in the world, as I mentioned in port, the best way to counter that is to not be spotted whatsoever. So as I get my next salvo downrange at the Nelson, you can see that the Mahan is at about half health, and he is moving away from the cap. However, you can see that there is a Miyoko that is on F2. So, pardon me, I am going to get one more salvo at the Nelson, as I do get detected by the aircraft. And now I'm going to swing my guns into play to try to deal with that Japanese heavy cruiser who is creeping up the 2-line due north. However, I'm going to switch to my AP after I get this next salvo off. I did mention it in port. If you are at 10 kilometers or under, the AP finally starts to show its colors. And while it's certainly not as potent as Soviet, American, or even German armor-piercing capability, when you do get to these kinds of ranges, you would be better off shooting armor piercing. And because you have the amazing accuracy, I mean, look how tight that salvo is. As long as you aim correctly, very good stuff right there. 7 over pens, 2 citadels off of the other 2 penetrations. So 9 of the shells out of 10 on target. And I chunked that Miyoko for about half of the hit points that he had remaining. And then, of course, as he angles away and tries to move away, I'm going to switch back to the high explosive, and hopefully we're going to be able to secure the kill on this guy. Now, unfortunately, I aimed just a little bit too high. With that kind of dispersion, I was actually well within the range of potentially nuking him outright, but you know, you can't really complain about 12,000 damage with a double citadel in any cruiser for that matter. So as the next salvo goes down range, he is going to burn out before my shells get there, and I pick up my first frag of the game as I'm up to 86,000 points of damage, and now we're going to get a little bit of utility here out of the spot plane. You see that I have once again targeted the Nelson. Any battleship that is slowly reversing is a prime target for your cruisers to shoot at, and of course this is going to be no exception for me. And since he's moving so slow, it makes aiming at these ranges extremely easy. And if you'll notice on the shell counter on the right side, you're going to see penetration after penetration after penetration as these shells fall in on his very weak deck armor and just light fires and do lots of damage. Now my buddies Pro Ace and Ready Set managed to get a couple of kills in the span of about 10 seconds, so even though we're losing by about 80 points at the moment and the enemy team does have 3 caps, they have lost more ships 3-2. And now our team, the Fletcher, is going to be getting and securing the A cap for our team. There's only a Belfast that is on about 1/3 hit points that is off to the southwest of our location. The trio of battleships, the Nagato, Bismarck, and the Nelson, are all running away from this cap, so we have secured it for our team, and they are not going to be able to get back on it. You can see that I have been playing with my rudder and my speed to try to dodge some of the battleship salvos that have been coming down range at me, but with propulsion modification too, I know a lot of people like to go with the rudder shift so you can get it down to below 6 seconds, but 7.3 second rudder shift is perfectly good, and I've noticed in recent months that I've been switching a lot to propulsion on my cruisers to really be able to speed up and slow down a lot quicker. However, as I'm moving into location, you can see the Donskoy that's spotted right there at 15.1 kilometers. He goes just far enough to the east, where now, once again, I am behind the islands, and I'm able to shoot with impunity, at least not being detected while I am shooting. This Nelson is at 14.5 kilometers, which, quite frankly, is way too close to an Ibuki these days, and I'm going to be lighting some fires and getting some more excellent damage set on that guy. The fire burns, and I've ticked up to about 110,000 points of damage. However, our team at the moment is still losing the game by about 180 points, so this Nelson's death is definitely going to help out in that regard. And you can see here, even at these intermediate ranges, just how many shells are landing on target. Now, unfortunately, he goes undetected on 2,900 hit points, and I manage 6 penetrations, but unfortunately, and quite frankly inexplicably, I do not manage to get the frag on that guy, so more on that in a little bit. But with that being the case, we're now going to try to dig this Belfast out of position. However, my buddy Ready Set managed to get a nice torpedo salvo right into that guy. So with him killed and our team now capturing the D point, it is time to push in and start dealing damage to the other battleships that are out here. Now, as you've probably seen throughout most of the game, the large majority of the salvos that I have fired have been at enemy battleships, but of course, whenever you're able to take a big chunk out of a cruiser or a destroyer, you absolutely need to take advantage of it, because being able to kill those ships are going to do a lot more towards helping your team win the game than just mindlessly spamming HE from the back at the battleships. So, with that being said, I'm not going to switch back to the Nelson, as he's on 19,000 hit points, and he definitely needs to be the next ship killed here. There's only battleships for us to deal with now, so obviously my statements of about 20 seconds ago don't really apply in this situation. But of course, you can see that all of my buddies now, we're getting some shots on this guy, which is important. He's down to 10,000 hit points, and hopefully we'll be able to get this frag. You can also see that Ready Set sent some torpedoes downrange at the enemy Nagato. So as soon as I manage to get a fire on this Nelson, which will secure his fate, I'm then going to switch my focus over towards the Nagato. As you can see that he is going to be eating a torpedo here, so obviously he is going to have to blow his damage control, which is very good. So we're going to get the guns reloaded, wait for the rear turrets to go, and we're going to get a salvo of the century off at this guy. The salvo falls in on the target, and 5,000 damage and a triple fire. That is absurd. I know that this is RNG hooking me up as I pick up the Arsonist and burn out that Nelson, the premium tier 7 British battleship. But yeah, unfortunately for that Nagato, his fate has definitely been secured with the triple fire. That is a horrible dose of RNG to him, but it is to my benefit, of course, as he continues to burn and burn and burn. And with my last salvo going down range at the Nagato, hopefully I'll be able to pick up the kill. I pick up Witherer and High Caliber as I finally get the frag on that tier 7 Japanese battleship. So 2 medals in the span of about a second there. And now we're going to be shooting down range at the enemy Bismarck Hartmann and see if we're going to be able to get some good damage in on him. You're going to see here, I'm going to be playing with my speed a lot. Speed tanking is definitely something that I have grown a lot more fond of recently. Just, switching between full speed and half speed and a quarter speed just to make it a lot more difficult for the enemy ships to hit you. More penetrations are so great to see as you're shooting at something like a Bismarck, which does have reasonable deck and extremity armor. I also pick up the Confederate as well, so we've got a nice quartet of medals, and I managed to have one shell hit the side of the hull for an over penetration, no big deal. But now I'm in a position where I'm able to, how about that, stealth fire against the Bismarck as he continues to run away. But of course, I don't need to needlessly extend the range, so now I'm going to turn back to port, and I'm going to try to stay at a constant distance to this guy, as he is, for whatever reason, sailing on a pretty predictable path, and most of my salvos that have went down range have done a lot of damage. Of course, fire RNG has been nice this game, but with a 21% fire chance, which in this replay I had Demolition Expert on my captain, I had to rebuy the ship on the NA client so I could do my import statistics stuff. The 21% fire chance is still pretty spicy. Our team has taken the advantage 707 to 656. We do have 2 of the caps. You can see there that Ready Set manages 2 more torpedoes on that guy. So the Bismarck does kick the bucket. Another good kill there by my Fletcher buddy. And now I'm going to use my spot plane for the second time in the game, as I'm going to try to get some shots downrange at the enemy Dmitry Donskoy. He's at 15.3 kilometers and running away, so this is a rather difficult shot. So with the spot plane, obviously I'm going to be able to have a much better time of getting accurate shells downrange. I'm only able to get my forward guns going, so 6 shells, which is not a lot, but with the accuracy it is still pretty good. I do manage to get 1 fire set on the aft section of the Dmitry Donskoy, and he's going to take a pretty big hit here any second now from somebody after my next salvo lands on his ship. And there we go, he gets put down to 1,057 hit points, so hopefully I will be able to get the very cheeky kill secure. It's not a steal, it's a secure here on that Tier 9 Soviet light cruiser, and I do manage to do so as I pick up my 4th frag of the game, and I'm up to 205,000 points of damage. Pro Ace is now on the sea cap, and there's only 2 enemy ships left, and you can see the last reported position of the Musashi as he now gets hard detected because he's entered my render distance. He is at about 1/3 hit points, but I still have 37 seconds left of my spot plane, so I'm going to try to get close enough to be able to lob some very long-range salvos downrange at that guy. And any second now, as I zoom back in, there we go. So what have you guys learned and seen throughout the course of this replay? Sure, it's Tier 9 max matchmaking, and in Tier 10 heavy games, the Ibuki is still somewhat mediocre compared to its counterparts, but it's able to do its job a lot better. In this game, you've seen very good long and intermediate range fire with both the high explosive and the armor piercing. You've seen good use of positioning and the scout plane to be able to safely shoot from behind islands and be able to hit those targets. You've also seen the maneuverability, especially the propulsion modification, coming in when I've had to dodge some shells, and basically putting the Ibuki in spots where you're not the center of attention. While that's something that is pretty standard for most cruisers, it's especially so for the Japanese ones, as they are rather flimsy, and something like a Musashi shooting at you is not a very good idea. I do manage to get a double fire on that Musashi, so obviously I'm going to burn him out a little bit, which is great. I did have to pull a Natsu to try to get an angle to him, but I'm not able to shoot at him anymore. However, the Gneisenau's Torpedoes do manage to finish the job off. So with 974 points, our victory is guaranteed at this point, and I do crack 218,000 points of damage as I got a few more ticks of fire damage on that Japanese battleship. So, a good game in the Ibuki, very well from a statistical standpoint, and my team, we were able to carry on the western side of the map and eventually lead toward a victory in this game. So with that being said, let's take a look at the post-battle results. Alrighty guys, taking a look at the post-battle results, 538,000 credits received, 12,000 total experience, and 2.3k free XP. This was not my first win of the day, and I did have a number of those special flags on. I picked up a Damage Farmer's Delight of Witherer, Confederate, High Caliber, and Arsonist, dealing 218,000 points of damage off of 215 shell hits. I had 2 Citadels with the AP and 21 fires set, and I fragged 1/3 of the enemy team. Taking a look at the team score, I actually didn't finish in first. That Edinburgh with 2 frags and 2252 base XP had a very good game, so Lord Valarian, very nice result. I finished in second place with 2239 base XP, and of course the 4 frags, and then Pro Ace and Ready Sit managed to have 4 frags combined, so our division accounted for 8 of the 11 enemy ships destroyed, and a very good chunk of the base XP that was to be had in that game. Taking a look at the detailed report, 125,000 damage dealt with the high explosive, and a further 80,000 damage dealt with the fires that I set. And then, of course, the 1 AP broadside that I had for 12,600 with the double Citadel. I only had 760,000 potential damage, which is not that much for a cruiser. However, there was a game that I had in the grind where I had 4.3 million potential damage because the ship does have good gun angles. And again, with the propulsion mod, I was able to just wiggle and dodge and slow down really quickly and speed up really quickly, where a lot of the enemy battleships were completely missing with their shots. I also had 16,000 damage received, which, like I said, this is a ship that does not really want to be shot at, so not being the center of attention is one of the most important traits to learn in your Japanese cruisers, and with the Ibuki, it is still very imperative. So, I hope you guys enjoyed this review and commentary. This is a ship that, like I said, I really enjoyed playing the second time through with all of the buffs that it got, and now I do have the Zhao on my EU account, which is nice. But I definitely did enjoy my time in the ship, and I hope you guys learned a thing or two watching this review and commentary. So with that being said, this is the Sneaky Snake for BIA World of Warships signing off. Guys and gals, as always, have a great day. Thanks for checking out our content, and I will talk to you later.